Centuries after the fall of Akkad, the lands of Mesopotamia were divided once more. Every city had its own god, its own ruler, its own law. Trade was uncertain, and justice was silent. But humanity never stays lost for long, because history is a story of order born from chaos. And in this story, a new city began to rise: Babylon. Not merely a city, but a dream. A place where justice would become the foundation of civilization. And the man behind that dream was Hammurabi. The true strength of a civilization lies not in its armies, but in its justice. Between the rivers Tigris and Euphrates, a new power emerged. Babylon's fields were fertile, its people ambitious, yet its society was fractured. A farmer's labor, a merchant's word, a craftsman's right, all depended on the ruler's will. Hammurabi saw this chaos and spoke, "If power alone decides truth, then the voice of the weak will never be heard." As Babylon's walls rose, so did an idea that law, not strength, would hold a kingdom together. Hammurabi was not a ruler sitting behind golden gates. He walked among his people. He listened to farmers, merchants, and craftsmen alike. Before creating laws, he sought to understand human behavior itself. Justice is born in the heart of humanity. The king merely gives it form. For the first time in history, leadership meant responsibility, not just authority. And then came a turning point in human history: the Code of Hammurabi, 282 laws carved into a single black basalt stele. Each line represented not just a rule, but a philosophy. Trade, marriage, property, debt, labor, all placed under one universal principle: justice. It was more than a law, it was a declaration. For the first time, law stood above man. Words may fade, but stone remembers. Hammurabi's purpose was not to punish, but to balance. Justice in Babylon was not vengeance, it was equilibrium. The strong and the weak stood equal before the same law. The stele declared, "So that the strong may not oppress the weak." These words were not mere politics, they were the first echo of human rights. Today, Hammurabi is often remembered for one phrase: an eye for an eye. But few truly understand what it meant. It was not about revenge, it was about proportion. A punishment should never exceed the crime. For the first time, justice was separated from wrath. When a society loses balance, it loses justice. This was the birth of measured law, the foundation of all future civilizations. Under Hammurabi, Babylon became more than a city. It became a symbol. Science, mathematics, astronomy, and medicine flourished. Priests studied the stars, and from the heavens, they found order temples became schools, archives, and observatories. The city lived by rhythm, the rhythm of law and learning. Babylon was not just the cradle of power, it was the cradle of knowledge. Hammurabi claimed his authority came from the gods, but not to rule through fear. Instead, he transformed divine will into human responsibility. Justice became sacred, not because it was powerful, but because it was righteous. The king must not be the shadow of the gods, but the voice of justice. It was the first time divine and human order merged into one moral idea. Markets filled the streets, merchants traded from faraway lands, and the rivers carried life through the plains. Children learned to write, scholars studied the stars, and builders raised temples to the rhythm of the sun. Every corner of Babylon reflected balance and purpose. Even women, in a time of inequality, held rights to trade and property, proof that Hammurabi's vision reached beyond his era. Empires rose and fell, but the black stone of Hammurabi remained. Today, it stands in the Louvre Museum, its carvings whispering from 3,800 years ago. The Greeks studied it, the Romans built upon it, and modern law still walks in its shadow. Ideas live longer than empires. Hammurabi's legacy is not a monument, it's a mindset. For the first time, humans learned to govern not by fear, but by principle. That moment when words became law, was when humanity learned to govern itself. Law exists for man, not man for law. Even today, Babylon's heartbeat echoes in every court, every constitution, every promise of justice. Hammurabi never sought to be a god, but his idea became divine in its endurance. Empires vanished, temples fell, names were forgotten, but justice endured. Because justice is more than a rule. It's a mirror of humanity. Today, we still debate the meaning of justice. But every time we speak of fairness, equality, or rights, we speak the language first carved in Babylon. True justice stands with what is right, not with what is strong. The code lives on, not in stone, but in our collective conscience. Babylon's walls crumbled, but its vision became immortal. The city disappeared, but the idea of law endured. Every legal code on earth traces its roots to that single stele of black stone, to the moment humanity realized that power must have limits. Stones may break, cities may fall, but ideas never die. Hammurabi's story reminds us that the true measure of a civilization is not its size, its armies, or its wealth, but its justice. The day justice was carved into stone, humanity began to write its story. And so, beneath the golden light of Babylon, humanity learned a timeless truth: that civilizations are not built by fear, but by understanding and fairness. This is not just the story of a king. It is the story of human conscience awakening.